LeBron James and the Lakers put on a pretty good show tonight as far as preseason games go. That's Bronny.
Bronny James, the son of NBA superstar LeBron James, has long been in the public eye. From a young age, he was thrust into the spotlight, with expectations looming large due to his father's immense success on the basketball court. For many, Bronny's life seemed to be paved with opportunities, with the world watching as he made his own way toward a professional career. But behind the glitz and glamour, there lies a far more tragic story. A young man trying to carve his own identity in the shadow of his father's greatness and facing struggles that were both personal and public. In this video, we'll dive into the heartbreaking, tragic life of Bronny James. The weight of expectations growing up. James. From the moment Bronny James was born in 2004, it was clear that his life would be intertwined with the world of basketball. His father, LeBron James, is one of the greatest basketball players to ever live, a global icon whose legacy is cemented with numerous championships, MVP awards, and countless records. As a result, Bronny was born into a world where the stakes were higher, the spotlight was brighter, and the expectations were extraordinary. Growing up, Bronny had to navigate a unique set of challenges. On the one hand, he had the privilege of having access to top-tier athletic resources, coaching, and the opportunity to train under the watchful eye of one of the greatest basketball minds in the world. But on the other hand, he had to deal with the constant comparisons to his father. Every time he stepped onto a basketball court, all eyes were on him, not just as a talented young athlete, but as LeBron James' son. For a child, this can be an immense amount of pressure. And for Bronny, this pressure was compounded by the fact that he had big shoes to fill. His early basketball journey was met with high praise. At St. Vincent Street Mary High School, his father's alma mater, Bronny displayed incredible skill, basketball IQ, and athleticism, quickly becoming one of the most hyped young players in the country. However, while Bronny showed flashes of greatness, it was impossible to ignore the constant scrutiny that came with being LeBron James's child. The world expected him to be the next LeBron, but Bronny wasn't just trying to live up to his father's legacy. He was trying to discover who he was as a person, as a player, and as a young man. The dark side of fame. Mental health struggles. As Bronny's basketball career began to take shape, so did the public's expectations. While fans were excited about his potential, the pressure to perform at a high level from such a young age began to take a toll on him. Behind his confident exterior, there were signs that Bronny was struggling. Mental health, particularly among young athletes in the spotlight, often gets overlooked. The burden of constant comparisons, the pressure to succeed, and the public's insatiable thirst for perfection can weigh heavily on anyone, let alone a teenager who is still trying to figure out who they are. Bronny was under the microscope at all times. Social media, news outlets, and fans would dissect every aspect of his performance, from his game-winning shots to his mistakes on the court. He was often judged not just for what he did, but for who he was, and this created a toxic environment for a young man who was still learning how to handle fame. Although LeBron James has been a vocal advocate for mental health and taking care of one's emotional well-being, there's no escaping the fact that Bronny's life in the spotlight wasn't as easy as it appeared. The stress of living in such a high-pressure environment began to manifest in ways that even his closest friends and family noticed. Bronny would withdraw from social situations and had periods of time where he seemed increasingly disillusioned with basketball. Though he never openly discussed his struggles, reports from those close to him suggested that he found it difficult to balance the fame, expectations, and the desire to create his own path. For many young athletes like Bronny, the pressures of success can lead to anxiety, depression, and feelings of inadequacy. A family legacy. The burden of greatness. While Bronny's father, LeBron James, had worked tirelessly to build his own legacy, Bronny had to navigate the overwhelming legacy that came with being LeBron's son. LeBron's career has been marked by near perfection, from his basketball skills to his philanthropic efforts. As a result, Bronny was not only expected to follow in his footsteps on the court, but also to uphold the same level of moral integrity and leadership off the court. This dual pressure, both in athletics and in the realm of public life, created an almost insurmountable challenge for a young man who was still growing and learning. Although LeBron always made it clear that he wanted his son to be his own person and follow his own dreams, Bronny's life was deeply intertwined with his father's legacy. His father's fame cast a long shadow over his own achievements. Every time Bronny excelled, he was compared to LeBron. Every time Bronny faltered, his failure was magnified. These constant comparisons were an unrelenting reminder that for Bronny, it wasn't just about proving his own talent. It was about living up to an impossible standard. As Bronny entered college and moved further into his basketball career, the pressure only increased. Despite his undeniable talent, he was still often seen as LeBron's son rather than Bronny James. The media and public seemed to define him in relation to his father, rather than acknowledging him for his individual potential. This relentless comparison became a burden, especially as Bronny started to face setbacks on the court, including injuries and moments of doubt about his future. The tragedy of unexpected health crisis. In a sudden turn of events, Bronny James faced a health crisis that would forever change the course of his young life. In the summer of 2023, during an off-season training session, Bronny suffered a sudden cardiac arrest. It was an unimaginable tragedy for a young athlete, and the news sent shockwaves through the sports world. The media immediately went into overdrive, covering every detail of his medical condition, his recovery, and the impact this would have on his career. The news of Bronny's cardiac arrest was met with a mixture of concern and support from fans, athletes, and even his father's peers. LeBron James, who had been his son's biggest supporter throughout his life, was visibly shaken. He expressed gratitude that Bronny was receiving medical attention and made it clear that his son's health and safety were the most important things in the world to him. While Bronny's recovery was hailed as a success, the event itself left a permanent mark on his life. The question of what caused his cardiac arrest remained a mystery, but the implications for his future were undeniable. The young man who had once been poised to follow in his father's footsteps now faced an uncertain future, both on and off the court. The medical scare forced Bronny to reconsider his athletic future, his health, and his priorities in a way that few young athletes are ever forced to. For Bronny, this tragic event would bring an entirely new perspective on life. It also brought with it a period of introspection, as he now had to grapple with the fragility of his career and future. A future uncertain. The road ahead. As Bronny James recovered from his health scare, the world waited to see how this tragedy would affect his basketball career. While the focus had shifted from his father's legacy to his own health and well-being, there was still immense pressure for him to recover and return to the game. The tragedy had put his entire future in jeopardy, and it was unclear if he would ever be able to reach the same level of success he once seemed destined for. The support for Bronny following his cardiac arrest was overwhelming, with fans and fellow athletes rallying around him. Many admired his resilience in the face of such a traumatic event, and his family remained his rock throughout this difficult time. But the pressure remained. Would he ever return to the court as the player he once was? Would he find his own identity outside of his father's shadow? Conclusion. The legacy of Bronny James. The tragic life of Bronny James is still unfolding, and his story is far from over. From a young man overshadowed by the greatness of his father to someone who faced a life-threatening health crisis, Bronny's journey has been filled with moments of heartbreak, struggle, and reflection. While the world watches and waits for his return to the court, it's important to remember that Bronny James is more than just the son of LeBron James. He is a young man trying to figure out his own place in a world that demands perfection.